What is the bottom line for someone listening right now who just wants to feel whole?
The core message for you, the listener, is this. You are not broken. You are becoming. The shiny objects left you feeling empty because they were external validations, completely disconnected from your true internal values.
Right.
But by embracing the law of conservation, knowing no part of your energy is ever lost, and by accepting the natural rhythm of life's crests and troughs, you can integrate your bitter and sweet parts. You can build true, sustainable fulfillment from the inside out.
That was an extract from the book I'm writing on Feeling Broken, a pathway to self-love and healing. Yes, you've landed on the Joyful Mate podcast. And I'm your host, your Joyful Journey mentor, Anthony Hartcher. And today's podcast is a extract from the book. Yes, and it's been generated by Notebook LM. So kudos to them in terms of grabbing all their manuscript and then summarizing it for you in a nicely spoken conversation. So I really hope you enjoy the updated manuscript. It's not complete. It's far from being complete, but I just wanted to give you a taste of what's coming in terms of the book. And so please just join in and listen and give me feedback as to what you think about the conversation that you're about to listen to. So I'd love to hear from you and hope it helps you on your journey to discovering more joy, fulfillment, and happiness.
So I want you to imagine staring at an X-ray of a broken arm.
Okay.
It's incredibly simple, right?
Right.
Like the bone is fractured. There's this jagged white line. The doctor points right at it. They slap a cast on it and, eventually you're cured.
Right. It's very precise.
Exactly. But what happens when you're walking around feeling absolutely shattered into a million pieces and the emotional X-ray just shows, well, absolutely nothing wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate diagnostic blind spot. We have this perfect medical model for physical trauma, but when you step into the world of human emotion or, identity and finding fulfillment, that X-ray machine is entirely useless.
It really is.
We're looking at a landscape that is just profoundly murky.
And look, I am talking directly to you listening right now because you are likely in your 20s or maybe your 30s. And if we're being completely honest here, you feel like you're in pieces.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
Yeah. So exhausted. You've spent years chasing these shiny objects, that next corporate promotion, that picture-perfect relationship, or just that idealized lifestyle you constantly see curated on Instagram.
And maybe you've even achieved some of it, right?
Right, but the elation was agonizingly temporary. And now you're just left with this hollow emptiness, basically wondering, is this it? Like, is this all there is?
Which, of course, leaves you feeling broken. But there is no visible fracture to point to. And I think that creates this secondary layer of suffering, which is the
shame is huge.
Yeah, the shame of feeling like you're failing at life when on paper, you should be perfectly fine.
Well, today we are dismantling that shame. We're taking a deep dive into an incredible collection of manuscript drafts, personal notes, and workshop materials for an upcoming book.
It's really fascinating stuff.
It's all about self-love, healing, and finding joy. These early drafts explore concepts from working titles like Feeling Broken and Thriving Isn't a Switch.
I love those titles.
Me too. And our mission today is to essentially be your personalized guide. We are going to unpack exactly why you feel broken, why those shiny objects are leaving you so empty, and map out a concrete, science-backed path to genuine fulfillment.
And I think the most radical premise we need to start with from these notes is this: your feeling of brokenness is essentially an illusion.
Okay, an illusion.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is how the author actually uses physics to explain human psychology. Specifically, the first law of thermodynamics.
Wait, really? Physics?
Yeah, the law of conservation.
So let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because applying physics to emotions sounds intense, but reading through it, it's actually incredibly comforting.
It really is.
So the first law states that energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed, right? They can only be transformed.
Exactly.
So if we apply that to your life, it means that nothing within you is ever truly lost. Your energy, your essence, your core worth, they haven't just vanished into thin air because you experienced a setback or hit burnout.
You aren't missing any pieces. The energy has simply changed form. The notes actually refer to this as the illusion of loss. We feel broken because we're judging our current state through a totally foreign, usually societal lens.
Like comparing ourselves to someone else's highlight reel.
Precisely. You might look at a peer and admire their relentless, 80-hour-a-week career drive. And because you don't feel that same drive right now, you assume you've lost your ambition.
Like it just evaporated.
Right, but the energy of that ambition hasn't evaporated. It might have transformed into a deep biological desire for meaningful rest or creative expression.
Or simply just figuring out who you actually are outside of the office.
Exactly. The pieces are all there. They're just manifesting in a form that aligns with your current evolving values.
You know, it makes me think of a massive Lego castle.
That's a good analogy.
Right. Like if that castle gets smashed to the ground, the pieces aren't gone. They haven't ceased to exist in the universe. They're just scattered all over the floor. You step on one, it hurt like crazy, obviously. But the mass of the Lego is exactly the same as it was when it was a castle.
Yeah, the Lego analogy gets us about halfway there, but it sort of implies the pieces are entirely static.
Oh, true.
A better way to look at it through the lens of thermodynamics is to incorporate entropy, which is the second law.
Okay, entropy.
Yeah, entropy is the natural tendency of any system to move toward disorder over time.
Right, like how your inbox feels like an absolute war zone by Friday afternoon if you don't actively manage it all week.
Exactly that mechanism, but applied to your identity. Life naturally moves toward chaos unless we apply intention and energy to maintain order.
So the mess is normal.
Completely normal. The chaos you feel, that scattered, overwhelmed sensation in your 20s and 30s, it isn't a permanent state of being broken.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just a complex system. Your mind, your relationships, your career, it just requires a little intentional energy to bring back to order.
Okay, but wait, I have to ask. If I have all my pieces and my energy just needs a little intentional organizing, why do I feel this deep void?
That's the big question.
Right, like if nothing is missing, why do I feel this constant exhausting hunger for something more? Because that's what makes me chase the shiny objects in the first place.
Well, that feeling of a void is the engine behind the shiny object chase. And to understand why those achievements leave us empty, we have to trace that hunger back to its origin.
Where does it start?
The research here points directly to our earliest neurological wiring in childhood. As infants, we are entirely dependent on caregivers for survival.
Sure.
So we learn pre-verbally that our physical safety actually depends on external approval.
We cry, we get fed, we smile, we get smiled at. It's a survival loop.
It is. It's a brilliant survival mechanism for a toddler. But as we grow into our teenage years and early adulthood, this mechanism morphs into what the author calls the mirror of comparison.
Ooh, mirror of comparison.
Yeah, and historically, human brains evolved in small tribes of, about 150 people?
Right, Dunbar's number.
Exactly. So you only compared yourself to the people in your immediate village. If you were contributing, you were safe. But today, yes, you are comparing yourself to the highly curated, globally optimized highlight reels of 8 billion people.
Which our brains literally process as a biological threat.
They do.
Like, if you see someone on Instagram achieving massive wealth at 25, your ancient lizard brain basically thinks, no, I am the least successful person in the village, I'm going to be ostracized, and I will starve.
That's exactly it. It triggers a literal survival panic.
Yeah.
And that panic forces us into a massive trap, which the notes call prioritizing validation over values. We become chronic people pleasers.
We shape our identities to meet other people's KPIs, societal KPIs, basically.
Exactly. We contort ourselves to fit what we think the world demands, and that is what fragments our identity. That's why the energy scatters.
And when we're fragmented, we try to grab onto anything that makes us feel stable. Like, I was reading through the manuscript drafts, and there's this fascinating breakdown of how this pushes us to over-identify with 3 distinct roles.
Yes, the hero, the villain, and the victim.
Right. We play the hero at work, constantly rescuing projects to gain praise.
Yep.
Or we play the victim when outcomes hurt, because it absolves us of responsibility.
And we're cast as the villain when we set a boundary that inconveniences someone else.
Exactly. Living in these roles drains our energy because we are just constantly performing.
We perform because it provides a false sense of certainty. Like, we would rather play a painful role than face the terrifying uncertainty of just being ourselves.
There's a metaphor in the notes that perfectly explains why we stay stuck in these roles. It's the monkey trap. Have you heard of this?
Yes, the banana in the jar.
Right. So hunters trap monkeys by putting a delicious banana inside a heavy jar with a narrow opening. The monkey reaches in, grabs the banana, and makes a fist. But the fist is now too big to pull back through the narrow opening.
And they're stuck.
Completely stuck. All the monkey has to do to escape the approaching hunters is open its hand, let go of the banana, and run. But its instinct won't let it abandon the prize.
That is exactly what we do with our hero or victim roles.
We cling so tightly to these familiar stories because dropping them feels like losing something valuable. even though holding on is literally keeping us trapped.
We hold on to our anxiety, our people-pleasing, and our pursuit of those shiny objects because it's a familiar script.
And a sugar rush.
Exactly. The shiny object gives a quick spike of dopamine, but then you crash. And you need another hit, so you reach into another jar for another banana.
But okay, I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Isn't it just fundamentally human to want to achieve things? Like if we stop chasing validation, if we drop the banana and stop playing the hero at work or in our relationships, do we just lose our ambition entirely?
That's a very common fear.
Like, are we supposed to just sit on the couch and stare at the wall?
Well, this raises a really important question about the difference between ambition and compulsion. Dropping the chase for external validation doesn't mean giving up ambition.
Okay.
It means completely redefining what progress actually looks like. And to illustrate this, the author shares a profound cultural shift they observed while spending time in Uganda.
Yes, I was really struck by the observations from Uganda in these notes. It completely flips our Western obsession with relentless productivity and arbitrary KPIs on its head.
It really does.
Can we talk about Paula Paula?
Yeah, Pala Pala. It translates roughly to slowly.
Slowly, slowly.
It's a cultural philosophy centered on building something meaningful together over time, without the frantic rush we're so accustomed to.
So let's focus on output.
Right. In this environment, there's significantly less focus on what you produce and far more time dedicated to simply existing.
It's about operating in a non-judgmental environment. And the manuscript makes a brilliant point here. At funerals, people do not read off your resume.
They don't.
They don't list your quarterly earnings or your follower count. They reflect entirely on your character, how you made people feel. Accomplishments are meant to follow character, not the other way around.
And internalizing that brings us to a fundamental shift in how we view the trajectory of our lives. Because society relentlessly sells us the idea that life must be a constant upward trajectory.
Right, a straight line of never-ending improvement, constant healing, and endless optimization.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the straight line is a total myth.
The total myth.
Life, just like the physics we talked about earlier, operates in waves, energy pulses.
Right.
The author introduces the law of octaves. It's this concept that all growth is inherently rhythmic. It features rises, plateaus, dips, and transformations.
So a plateau isn't a failure.
Exactly. When you hit a plateau or a dip, modern culture tells you that you're stagnating. Biologically and psychologically, a plateau is a period of necessary integration. Health and happiness aren't switches you can just flip on and off. They exist at what the author calls the edge of chaos, which is the space where uncertainty meets curiosity.
I love thinking about this like the ocean. You literally cannot have the crests of the waves without the troughs.
Right.
That low, dark point pulling back from the shore. That is where the water gathers its mass, its power, and its momentum for the next wave.
Without the trough, the wave doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to play devil's advocate for a second,
Sure.
how do we practically ride this wave when we feel like we are currently tumbling underwater? Like when you're in that trough of anxiety, depression, or deep burnout, knowing it's just a trough doesn't magically stop you from feeling like you're drowning.
No, it doesn't. It is a very real, visceral struggle. And the insight offered here is that when you are in that trough, the way out is not to hustle hard.
You can't fight the ocean?
You can't. The way out isn't to chase another shiny object for a quick, superficial breath of air. The way out is through a process called integration.
Integration. So taking those scattered, transformed pieces of your energy and actually making them work together.
Yes, but with a crucial caveat. Integration means loving the whole self. It means actively bringing home the parts of yourself that you've disowned, hidden, or labeled as bad or unacceptable because they didn't fit that shiny, successful narrative you were trying to project.
There's a really simple, powerful equation for this in the drafts. It's bitter plus sweet equals wholeness.
I love that equation.
You have to embrace the opposites, right? It's easy to love the productive, smiling, high-achieving version of yourself, but you have to love the tired, messy, anxious, deeply flawed version too. Why is that so hard for us?
Well, largely because of our negativity bias and our trauma responses. When we experience the bitter parts of life, we often engage in what the author calls surface relating.
Surface relating. What is that?
It's what you do when you are in survival mode. You're hustling, you're shutting down your true feelings, you're constantly scanning your environment for threats, and you're trying to rigidly control outcomes to stay safe. It's your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response just running the show.
It's exhausting. You're basically just managing optics.
Highly exhausting. Deep relating, on the other hand, is about true presence. It engages the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state.
So dropping the act.
Exactly. It's about dropping the labels, dropping the hero and victim costumes, and truly hearing and feeling what is happening in the moment, both within yourself and with others.
And this directly ties into how we change our behaviors, right? The notes discuss identity-driven change.
Yeah, this is a huge shift.
Because instead of setting behavioral goals based on a feeling of lack or self-hatred, like telling yourself, I need to work out because my body is wrong and I'm undisciplined, you step into a fluid identity.
Right.
You tell yourself, I am someone who honors my energy. You change the core belief, and the behavior naturally follows.
The intention shifts entirely from punishment to nourishment.
So what does this all mean in practice? Like, how do we actually perform this integration when our deepest, most primal instinct is to run as fast as we can away from pain and shame?
Theory is wonderful, but you're right, it ultimately comes down to specific, grounded practices. And the materials outline highly actionable steps to help you shift from feeling broken and chaotic to feeling rhythmic and whole.
Let's walk through these, because this is the toolkit. This is how you stop tumbling underwater and learn to ride the wave.
Okay, so the first practice is the integration check-in. Throughout your day, just notice a part of yourself that you've been judging or actively avoiding.
Sudden spike of intense jealousy.
Yeah, or a wave of exhaustion you're trying to push through with caffeine. Instead of repressing it, pause. Ask that uncomfortable feeling 2 questions. What are you protecting, and what do you need?
And then you offer it a kind phrase. The author actually suggests literally saying to that uncomfortable feeling, you belong with me.
Yes, you don't banish the anxiety to the basement, you invite it to sit at the kitchen table.
I love.
Next is role release. We discussed the hero, villain, and victim cycle.
Right.
When you feel yourself slipping into one of those roles, say you're overfunctioning at work to save the day, or you're spiraling into a victim mentality after a text message is left on read.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. You physically place a hand on your chest and say aloud, I am more than this role.
Physically breaks the neurological circuit. It reminds your brain that the role is just a costume, not your actual skin.
Exactly.
And then there are reconnection rituals. Now, these aren't grand, expensive, time-consuming wellness retreats, right?
No, not at all. They are tiny sensory anchors. Things like brewing a cup of tea and forcing yourself to fully taste it without looking at your phone.
Or stepping outside barefoot just to feel the earth for 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But, okay, I have to challenge this one.
Go ahead.
Stepping outside barefoot for 60 seconds sounds lovely, but when I am having a full-blown panic attack about a work deadline or a relationship ending, how does cold grass actually stop the spiral?
That's a great question. It actually intercepts the amygdala's threat signal.
Really?
Yeah. When you're spiraling, your brain is entirely caught in the future, imagining worst-case scenarios. By shocking your system with a strong, immediate physical sensation like cold grass on bare feet, or the intense taste of bitter tea, you force your brain to process present-moment sensory data.
Oh, wow.
It literally grounds your nervous system. It pulls you out of the imagined future threat and anchors you in the physical present where you are actually safe.
That makes perfect sense. These rituals build true energy momentum and sustainable vitality, rather than the frantic, anxious stimulation you get from chasing shiny objects.
Exactly. And the final piece of the toolkit is the compass ceremony.
The compass ceremony.
This is about deep, radical trust. It's the realization that you do not need an external map to navigate your life.
You don't need the influencer's morning routine, the boss's approval, or society's timeline to know you're on the right path.
No. You are the compass. You are the safest place to return to.
It is the ultimate antidote to shiny object syndrome.
It really is.
You know, it really makes me think about tuning an instrument. Doing this work is exactly like tuning a guitar. You don't just tune a guitar once in 2015 and expect it to play perfectly forever.
Right, life happens.
Exactly. The temperature in the room changes, you bump it against a door frame, you play it hard, it goes out of tune. These practices, the integration check-in, the reconnection rituals, they aren't a one-time fix.
No.
They are how you continually retune yourself to your own authentic frequency. So if we look at the ultimate transformation this journey offers, what is the bottom line for someone listening right now who just wants to feel whole?
The core message for you, the listener, is this. You are not broken. You are becoming.
You are becoming.
The shiny objects left you feeling empty because they were external validations, completely disconnected from your true internal values.
Right.
But by embracing the law of conservation, knowing no part of your energy is ever lost, and by accepting the natural rhythm of life's crests and troughs, you can integrate your bitter and sweet parts. You can build true, sustainable fulfillment from the inside out.
You don't need to be fixed, you just need to be gathered.
Beautifully said.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, slightly mind-bending concept from the very end of our research for this deep dive.
Well, this is my favorite part.
We've talked about thermodynamics, but the author brings up this beautiful idea of matter as music.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the frontiers of quantum biology, it is truly profound. Scientific studies are showing that generic sound wave fields, specifically things called scalar waves, actually shape physical matter.
Wait, really?
Yes. Researchers have demonstrated that acoustic phonons can be actively influenced by external magnetic fields.
Okay, let's break that down for a second because it sounds like straight-up sci-fi.
It does.
Think of a phonon not as a hard, physical particle, but as a ripple of heat or sound moving through a crystal. Science is showing that we can actually bend and shape those ripples using magnets and sound waves.
Which means the universe isn't just a collection of dead, silent particles bumping into each other.
No, it is a highly sensitive, resonant organism. Everything is vibrating. Everything is literally making music.
The environment shapes the matter through resonance.
Exactly. So the next time you feel like your life is in total chaos, or that you are falling to pieces on the floor like that smashed Lego castle, what if you aren't breaking at all? What if your personal frequency is just shifting and the universe is simply tuning you to a deeper, more beautiful octave?